Who is Chris Arnade? Well, many things. He started as a physicist, earning a PhD from Johns Hopkins, and then took to Wall Street, spending 2 decades on an elite trading desk at CitiGroup before disillusioning his well-dressed allies to engage in the photography, walking, and writing of the great and forgotten cities of the world. He's a best-selling author, but as well, a best-subscribed Substacker. Chris Arnade Walks the World is the publication's name, and in it, Chris lives up to the title. Japan, Europe, China, Australia, the Faroe Islands, Canada, the expansive US of A, Turkey, Korea, Indonesia, even Uzbekistan, which gets a special mention in this podcast, cities within all of these great nations and many more, Chris has trod and documented. His format is slow and empathetic. Chris will embark on several 20 to 30 kilometer journeys at a location, take photos, and then report on his walk. I can't remember how long I've been subscribed, although it feels like years, but the other day I woke up to an email which detailed Chris's initial impressions of Sydney. I replied to the email right away, and just a few hours later was guiding him along the Malabar Trail. Steve and I, walking alongside Chris from the area I grew up to the most iconic beach in Australia. This was a special serendipity which came out of nowhere and furthermore led to this podcast today. We recorded this interview on the rooftop of my apartment building, and with no further ado, here it is. Well, then I reckon the best place to start would be your impressions of Sydney.
It's a wonderful city. I call it. I think the thing I said was it's like a child of L.A. and London that's inherited the best qualities of each. From L.A., it's got this beautiful setting, which I can see now up here on your roof, and wonderful trees, beautiful beaches, great coastline. Great climate, and space, and from London it's gotten pretty much everything else. Kind of an English pub culture, a culture of going to sports, and kind of what I would call good living in the English manner. But it's also a city of suburbs. Like what's kind of striking is when you walk around here, it's you really feel like in many ways that you're kind of in a clean, safe version of the U.S. suburbs, because everybody has a small home with a yard that's immaculately kept, and with garden, and maybe a small boat parked out front of the house that they use on the weekends. It's kind of I think what you people would call normies have a pretty good life here.
It's funny you were just saying earlier, or rather, I think it's funny that you've probably seen intimately quite a lot more of Sydney than most people might who grew up and live here. For instance, you were just saying how you got on the train north, got on the train west, got on the train south, and would just get off at a random point and walk between 20 kilometers a day.
Correct. When the weather would allow me. It's not. It's been rainy the last much of my time here, but yeah, I mean, I just kind of take the subway. Generally, the subways here, the metros, the trains, whatever you want to call them, they don't go to the coast, which is notable. I think that's intentional. They want to keep people away from the beaches for some reason, but they go out west. And,
you reckon it's by design?
Yeah, I think it's by design. It doesn't surprise me that the only line going out toward the beaches stops about a mile short of Bondi Beach.
Totally, yeah.
So they kind of sprawl out. The lines sprawl out, and they're good. They're really fast. They're clean. They come regularly, and they go fast. So you can live 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers outside of the city and be downtown in 30 minutes. So it's all very, and those places they're huge. The neighborhoods out there are just massive. They're not high density, not like you see in kind of other Asian cities. They don't have a lot of office towers. They don't have a lot of apartment buildings. It's just a lot of small ranch style homes.
Totally.
On like a quarter acre of land.
How much of the culture do you think you can infer from just walking around various parts of it over a number of days?
I think quite a bit. It helps that obviously I speak the language, although I will tell you there are times I just don't understand what people say here. I absolutely do not understand, especially in the more working class neighborhoods. There are people who will say things and I just don't know what they're saying. But hopefully I've gotten pretty good at just observing by just walking and just sitting in, cafes and talking or just watching people. And I spent a fair amount of time in my life in UK, both living there and then walking around it. And there are times here, or especially early on, when I was kind of delusional from jet lag, where I really felt like I was in London.
Right.
And then I'll look up and then I'll see, oh, well, there's a harbor. London doesn't have a harbor.
Yeah.
You see that especially on the high streets. You've inherited the kind of English idea of you have, suburban, you have houses, and then you have one high street in each neighborhood where you put the chemist and the pharmacy and the restaurants and the cafes, and so that feels very much the case. You still have that here.
Are you a chatty fella when you're going around? Do you find yourself?
Yeah,
falling
in
into
general.
conversations?
When my mood is usually good. The weather, I will say again, the weather has kind of got me down at times. It's been, for your listeners who are not in Sydney, it's probably been some of the 10 wettest days in the recent past of Sydney, I've been told.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tend to just talk to people. I just kind of go up and just ask them questions, and in general, everybody's been friendly here. People in Australia are remarkably friendly. That's the biggest difference between here and UK.
That's nice.
It's almost like I think I'm going to guess the English would make fun of you and say you're almost like puppy dogs, like it's just like the yippy puppy dog who just wants to keep on getting pet. There is a sense of like immense people want to be agreeable in a way that's I find refreshing, but I can imagine would grow old after a while if you're kind of a cynical person.
Yeah. Do you think you're a cynical person?
There are times I tend to it. I try not to be. I think it's something you always, if you're an intellectual, you have to fight cynicism pretty hard to not descend into it.
Not just be overcome by all the problems that you can't help but notice.
Exactly. There are times when you travel, you feel there are moments when you feel completely isolated, and so that kind of can become almost a defensive cynicism.
Take the other day, for instance, when you posted something and then within a few hours you had a couple of people from that city writing to you saying, hey, I'm in town, I want to meet you, let's go for a walk. Is that something you enjoy, or is that also very mood dependent? Sometimes
I enjoy that. It happens. It doesn't happen. It happens in general in big cities like Sydney. It doesn't happen. It happens far less in places. The places I go more often are like Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia.
Oh, totally.
I don't get people saying they want to walk with me. So yeah, I appreciate it. It's a nice change of pace. I am by myself so often, and I do like to be by myself. It's not a complaint. I feel like I can think better that way. But yeah, it's nice to have people to walk with. And Sydney this was probably been the city where I've gotten the most requests, to the point where
was that a fact?
I had to be kind of I probably was unintentionally rude. I didn't mean to be to some people. I just didn't respond.
Yeah.
Just because I kind of got. What happens is I'll get like a request and I'll just put the person's name down, and then I'll put them in parentheses in WhatsApp as Sydney. And I think I have like 30 Sydney people, and I might have got some of you confused, or some people. But yeah, I mean, there is a friendliness here that I think is at all levels, which is just not true of other cities, and I'm not quite sure why that is. Why Australians are so friendly.
Do you have a thesis for why it might be?
I mean, I think some cultures are just path dependent. It just happens. It just becomes part of the national character. People almost embrace that. I think there is but I think there is this idea that it's a good life here. Like,
Totally.
A friend of mine who does similar things as me suggested, after reading my piece, suggested that it wasn't really all that deep, that Australia is really just England with good weather, and that makes I think it's deeper than
without the class structure inherited.
that. I mean, the lack of class structure is huge. That's the whole point of the suburbs, right? Like the suburbs are in many ways kind of a democratized version of the manor, with in a very almost cosplaying being a lord. You have your own your own kingdom, and sure you have a next kingdom is 3 meters away, but like you have your space,
Yeah.
and you have the car, you have the boat.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to sound dismissive. It's a very good life here, and I think of all the countries I've been in, and certainly the first world countries, I think Australia does the best providing the most people the kind of most comfortable life.
Yeah.
Like if you're, I think Australians don't have any perspective on how violent the U.S. is. When people told me, the bad neighborhoods here, I went to them and they weren't bad, not by U.S. standards at all. I didn't feel any sense of, there was some litter here. There was a little bit, houses might have been a little bit more run down. English was less spoken, but there was no sense of kind of danger.
Right. Well, we are self-branded the lucky country. And so, like you say, that the cultures might be path dependent. Having this idea, one that you grow up with, that there is, just by good fortune, you happen to have the great weather, access to the beaches, a pretty thriving labor market. The one complaint consistently is just the cost of things, but that's kind of a perennial universal complaint nonetheless.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who's an economist, and the problems that people here complain about, housing costs primarily, are the same in UK and the same in Canada and the same in the US. It's almost like the English-speaking world has inherited this, and I think it has to do with kind of what I'm going to write about next, which is this what I was just talking about, is the wanting the suburban life. It takes up a lot of space.
Totally.
And consequently, it just costs more.
Yeah.
High density living is that for instance the Chinese or the Indians or even the Germans and French might find more acceptable. I just think the English-speaking world doesn't view as kind of
they
don't want to aspire to that.
What we're looking over here is Kensington, Randwick, Paddington, Moore Park, Rose Bay, Surrey Hills, even half the getting into the city, and I don't know, there's maybe 10, 15 towers and thousands of more lower houses. It's just exactly that point. I think that a lot of people can wax lyrical about state policies for limited housing and so forth, but there's just a fixed amount of supply and excess demand.
Yeah, I think
it becomes expensive.
The other thing here is, you walked with me for part of the walk, where I walked from, what was the South Beach called? Malabar to Bondi, and then I walked from Bondi to Paddington, and that coastline is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And nobody who currently owns a home on there is going to let that value be eroded by constructing other homes next to it, by having towers. And you can't blame them. So in some senses, Sydney is gifted with this, these beautiful geography, but it also causes the housing prices to be kind of. I can understand there being a draw to being towards the shore. Now, the West is much more. The West I focused on is much more affordable, and I actually would say that. I understand people would rather be next to one of the beaches we walk through, within a mile of that, and as I spoke about, getting from the west to the beaches is unnecessarily hard, but getting from the west into the city is fast. The rail lines are efficient. They move quickly. You have express trains. So, I was I was pretty far south of the city yesterday. And I was able to get into CBD within 30 minutes. One, someone texted me and said, "Look, can you meet me at blank?" And I was there in 30 minutes. I jumped on a bus, which took me to the express train, which took me to the train. And that's not, the U.S. doesn't have that. The U.K. has less of that. Canada doesn't have that. So in that sense, you have the infrastructure to sprawl. So if I was, obviously nobody wants to give up on the dream of living next to the beach, but I was down south of the airport and there's beaches there, and they're really nice. And it certainly looked much more affordable than what it is kind of near Bondi. So there is a lot of options here that I think a lot of people kind of. I don't think Sydney is in as bad a position as people think it is.
Which is interesting for you to say because you do have this global perspective. How many cities has it now that you've reported from?
I don't even, 60,
Right,
70.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean. It's
like you don't know what you don't know.
I presume a lot of people who are listening to this are Australians and are in Sydney, and I'm not really blowing smoke up their ass when I say it's a really great city. I'm not lying, just to make people here happy. I think the problem comes, and I think when people tend to, there's always this tendency that you want to find the better thing.
Right.
So this is the assumption that maybe you
That's
are in
human
the
nature.
best thing.
Yeah.
Is just is considered wrong. I could easily see being happy here.
Mm-hmm.
It provides a good life.
But let's speak a little bit more about you. So you mentioned how you kind of like to retreat into solitude and be alone. This is quite the intriguing post-retirement hobby that you have adopted. Do you remember what the impetus was that drew you towards it in the first place?
I've always liked. I have a background where I come from both a scientific background. I have a PhD in physics, and then from there I went to Wall Street. So I was a banker for 20 years. And in both of those cases, it was very numbers oriented. I was focused on kind of, a friend of mine has coined the term spreadsheet brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's very spreadsheet brained, where you are kind of just looking at everything in a very analytic number, or you're stuck in a room,
yep.
Looking at a wall of computers, flashing numbers, and that just kind of lost its appeal after a certain point when I realized that that's really not how most people live. That's not how most people view the world. That's not how most people see the world. And so I always enjoyed long walks as a way to kind of get a different perspective, or just to lower stress from being in finance, or or coding, or doing whatever you do when you look at a wall of computers. So walking was always my way of kind of relaxing in a way.
Yeah.
And then it really became also a way of learning. And I realized during those walks I was actually learning as much as I was relaxing. And so I do find that relaxing. Like, part of the problem with being here, not being able to walk as much as I want to because of the weather. And I've also had some back problems recently, which is rare. So I get kind of, I do get kind of in a bad mood when I can't walk, because it's really how it's my form of meditation. It's
Totally.
how I stay in shape. It's how I think. I listen to a lot of books when I'm walking, or just thinking.
Yeah.
And so it's hard not to walk for me, and that it makes it really kind of. And so in many ways, it's kind of my therapy, or my form of meditation.
Do you still apply that Excel sheet brain and the immense education that you spoke quite a lot about on Tyler Cohen's episode from trading developing markets? Do you apply that worldview to when you are walking through Ulaanbaatar or Ho Chi Minh?
Yeah,
and do you think it provides a richer experience of knowing where you are?
I mean, I do have a finance background and a physics background, so I tend to I'm still a scientist. I still think about things in economic framework. So, I always build what I call a toy model. That's just how I traded. I was a
Right.
macro trader. So I tend to do that when I approach a new country. Like, I built a toy model for Australian economy, and then as I'm walking, I'm kind of like refining that model to see like, does this work? Does this fit with what I see? And so I do kind of have still a spreadsheet brain in terms of how I think about
I love that.
how I think about the world. But then, it's kind of like the kind of a Bayesian statistics method where I go out and walk, and that's what kind of that input changes my framework.
Sure.
So I'm always building kind of a model of, that's still very much the spreadsheet brain.
Which city has most contradicted the toy model you built?
Oh, that's a good question. Which is a city has what city have I most been surprised by?
Yeah.
I think the city that most kind of caught me off guard in terms of like I just didn't expect this was it's a strange answer, but I just was in Tashkent, which is the capital of Uzbekistan,
Oh, I love that.
and just a lovely city.
Right.
And I didn't know a lot about Uzbekistan. I knew, like a lot of the stands, it kind of was a mineral-rich country that, that kind of exported. I think in Uzbekistan's case, it's gold, but and I know it had an authoritarian leader who was kind of a post-Soviet dictator type. But I didn't expect to find it to be as pleasant of a city and as livable as a city, and and it's very Muslim, and as kind of friendly as a city as I did, and in an odd way, open city. I mean, it has this quote repressive regime, but it doesn't feel like that at all. And so it was kind of one of those places where, kind of the most misunderstood city, and I think nobody thinks about going. No passport bro or
Passport bro.
or like,
What's that? Someone collecting stamps.
No, that's kind of the guy who's maybe some of your listeners, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it's kind of the programmer who can work from anywhere.
Okay.
And
Yeah, the digital nomad.
Yeah, digital nomad does it from Portugal or something. Maybe like Tashkent is where I would do that.
Right on.
If I was like, if I was a programmer, I could work from anywhere in the world. Tashkent would be up in the list. But I think I very rarely go into a place cold, in the sense of my work in finance. My 20 years of finance, I grew up traveling. My work in finance had given me a lot of perspective. I think Jakarta is another one that was, kind of Jakarta from a Indonesia in general, from a statistical level. If you're just looking at it on a spreadsheet and you're building models based on kind of like, this should be, these 5 factors should make this place functional. These 5 factors should make Jakarta should be a lot more chaotic than it is, and Indonesian society should be a lot more violent than it is. Whereas, Jakarta, has crime statistics that are almost equivalent to Scandinavia, even though it's like 100 times poorer.
Right.
So Jakarta is one of those cities that is just very well. It works very well. The culture there works very well. The society works very well in a way that makes, even despite the poverty and despite a lot of the problems, traffic being one of them, makes for people, relatively happy people.
And Jakarta, rather Indonesia, aren't they projected to be one of the top 5 most populous and biggest economies in the world in the next 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I mean,
Do you find this sort of stuff a little bit BS, that prediction?
Yeah, I find most of it BS. Like, there's a lot of this is analysis by people who've never gone to these places, and I have a lot of respect for the Indonesians, but they have some geographical constraints. Like just getting around is
Right.
hard.
Yeah, did you see that they're trying to move the capital city
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
a new jungle territory?
I mean, it's just the weather is atrocious. Getting around is is scattered over so many different islands, and they have a bunch of different natural resources. And so I think I think I would in general bet on Indonesia going forward. I don't think it's going to be the superpower anytime soon. And then the continual, and I think people do this because they don't want to be. I think there's pundits out there who do it just because they don't want to be seen as being politically incorrect. They'll just say sub-Saharan Africa is our future. It's not our future.
Yeah. What makes you say that?
I mean, it's just chaotic.
Yeah. So just a population boom doesn't immediately equal
population doesn't
power and significance.
And you
and
just can't
influence.
run the thing forward and say because their population is growing, because the Asian miracle, we're going to have a sub-Saharan African miracle. There's just currently intractable problems that you see when you get there, that are not going to be fixed anytime soon. Like, Nigeria is a country gifted with immense resources. It's a fucking shit show. Like I probably the hardest place I've been is Dakar, and again, you can't see it from the spreadsheet. Like it's just a dysfunctional place at so many different levels.
Yeah.
And it's a real tragedy in many ways. That's dysfunctional. This is not something I'm happy about. It's just very, very, very depressing.
Talk us through some of the dysfunction.
It's just things just don't get done. Like there's a broken culture in many ways. There's not a sense of, and I think a lot of it has become. There's the foreign aid. 60 years, 80 years, 100 years of a kind of foreign aid and has really hollowed out any kind of locally produced sense of
Because it created a type of dependence?
Yeah. Definitely. And then the whole foreign aid infrastructure complex industry, whatever you want to call it, is completely removed in many ways from the people. Like it's really can be depressing to be there. You see these, UN type truck vehicles and these people who, are working for institutions that are well intentioned, but they fly in, they get into a limo, go into a gated compound, and live a life that's entirely different from the locals. I mean, one of the things I'll never forget, I walked all over Dakar, even into neighborhoods I was told not to go to, and it was safe. There was never that. It's a respectful. People are fine. It's a good group of people. It's a good citizens, decent human beings, just like in any culture. But like I remember this, watching people start fires for street food.
Yeah.
The skewers of meat, they're making the fires with plastic. Like I don't want to eat, food cooked over plastic. It's just there's just a sense of just
Or walk down a street filled with that air.
Yeah, and it's just there's a level of desperation, filth also. That's just not healthy. And so, I don't care how many natural resources a place like Nigeria has. They can't get their act together. You can blame colonialism. You can blame whatever. I don't care. Whatever you blame, the net effect is at this current juncture, I'm not betting on them going forward.
If you apply your old finance worldview, what do you make of Australia's lack of coordination, collaboration, immigration, etc. with Indonesia? This incredibly populous northern neighbor, super close, lots of natural resources, yet there aren't Indonesian restaurants around Sydney. I was listening to a podcast recently talking about the numbers of immigration. There's more Indonesian migration into Taiwan than there is Australia.
Yeah, you have Vietnamese, you have Chinese, you have Nepalese, you have Koreans, you don't have Indonesians. That's not entirely true. There's I've run into a few kind of service workers who are from Indonesia, but in general, Indonesia doesn't. As much as I like Indonesia, Indonesian food is crap.
So come on, mate.
The best Indonesian food I've had was in actually
Amsterdam,
and it's not the kind of takeouts, the tokes.
Yeah,
you don't have those in Jakarta.
Right.
In Jakarta, what I ate, I've been collectively in Jakarta, Bandung, and a bunch of small villages 3 months of my life. All I basically eat is all that's available is some version of cheap fried rice.
Right.
With
or 7-Eleven.
Yeah, with crap oil. The wonderful food you get in Amsterdam is not something you get most people in Indonesia eat. So but the lack of kind of the other thing is, like, in some senses, both if Indonesia and Australia are competing for the same economic model. You're both exporting minerals to China, who gives you back manufactured products. So in some senses, your competition. You don't have. There's not a lot of synergy there. You guys don't manufacture anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You just export materials. You have a service industry, and I would imagine you have a lot of. Do you get a lot of Indonesian students here who are studying?
No, don't see many.
Really?
I think it's mostly Chinese. I'm not an expert on this.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah, Indonesia is a strange place because they don't for a place of such immense size. They really don't make any splashes in the water. Like when people talk about India and China, and people just forget Jakarta.
Right.
Like when they talk about the massive global cities, Jakarta has 40 million people.
No, it's insane.
In the area, and people just forget about it.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't exist. And I think Indonesia is kind of happy that way.
Right.
They're like
You don't think they have ambitions to compete in the world powers?
They were briefly a part of the non-aligned movement under what's his name, Suharto. I can't pronounce his name, Suharto, the dictator they had for like 25 years. But since then, they've just kind of, they're probably the most, they are a good trivia answer to people who claim there is no such thing as a Muslim democracy.
Right.
They're very Muslim and they're very democratic.
I think also the largest Muslim country in the world.
Yeah. So,
But it's a different type of Islam.
As a guy at the Dunkin' Donuts, when I was in Jakarta, I used to hang out at the Dunkin' Donuts with an old man table, a bunch of Chinese businessmen who invited me they get together every day at 4. They would invite me to come smoke cigars. I didn't smoke cigars. They'd go into the smoking room and smoke cigars and talk about.
There's smoking rooms at a Dunkin's?
Yeah, there's a smoking room in the Dunkin's, and the Dunkin's are their big kind of. That's their big brand there.
All right.
You can get
good American soft power doing its job.
Yeah, you can get spaghetti bolognese from Dunkin' Donuts at 6 in the morning. But one of the Chinese businessmen, Indonesian guy who'd been there, he's ethnically Chinese, but he's Indonesian. He told me we have just enough Islam to keep teens from drinking, but not enough that they want to blow things up.
Fuck me.
That was his kind of crude way of suggesting that it's kind of a moderate Islam. Yeah. So it's I like Jakarta a lot, but you're right. It's your closest neighbor.
Yeah.
But you famously, back in the 2000s, made it very clear that you do not want boat people.
Yeah.
Coming from Jakarta, from any place in Indonesia, any place in the world, mostly from Indonesia.
One more point on Indonesia. You made a really interesting comment the other day when we were walking around, and it was the observation that something like 3% of the ethnic population within Indonesia is ethnically Han, so Chinese.
Correct.
Yet they are by far the powerful elite, from political to business.
Yeah, they're kind of the business class. You have that a lot in third world countries, developing countries, whatever you want to call them. There's generally always a an ethnic minority business class. I mean, the Jews famously filled that role in much of the Western world. In French Africa, it can be Lebanese. In a lot of Asia, it's Chinese.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Indonesia, it's the Chinese, and you know, in general, like you know, if you go to, you know, you see them, they're wealthy relative to the population. So Jakarta has like a lot of developing countries. It has malls, big kind of fancy malls, where the elites go. The kind of malls that feel like you're in Europe with Saks Fifth Avenue and perfume stores and Nike stores and you know, all
Gucci
that stuff.
and Armani.
Yeah. But when you're in those malls, you just look around you and it's highly ethnic Chinese.
Similar to the observation that the Lebanese minority in a French-speaking country, or the Jewish in Europe, or the ethnically Chinese in Asia, that's maybe a really important but totally unknown observation you've been able to make because you've walked through all these various places. What are some other observations like that you've made? Principally being, it's really important to understanding the fabric of this country, yet it's totally underappreciated.
I think, you know, I think, and it's a hard. Well, faith really matters a lot. People know that, like the faith of a country. But I think, you know, there being some sort of. I've written about it before, and I just use kind of the broad term low trust, high trust. You know, if there's and it's something that's hard to quantify, but you know it when you see it, and you know it and the best way to see it is from just walking through these places. Is, you know, is there a sense of citizens feeling like they, you know, if they're not being watched, will they still follow rules? You know, if they're, will they pay to get on the bus even if it's kind of like not enforced? You know, there's no policemen around. And in general, that's kind of the most important single variable that kind of
The low trust, high trust dichotomy.
that either makes a place work or doesn't.
So what endears high trust societies?
I mean, Japan's a classic example. Korea, to some surprisingly Indonesia. That's you know, because it's generally people see it as in wealthy countries. Australia has a pretty high trust.
But is it culture or is it institutions that endear that high trust?
You know, that's the $1 million question. I mean, it's kind of like it's a feedback loop between culture and institutions. I mean, culture is created by institutions and culture creates institutions. But in general, it's you know, I'm a culturalist in the sense that I think culture determines everything, and you know, culture, broadly speaking, is how you view your role in the world.
Yeah.
You know, the amazing thing about humans are, you know, the thing about humans that's interesting, like if I were to just take you and a monkey and drop you both in the Amazon, just nude, you're going to die. The monkey's going to survive. I could do that with a roach. I could do that with a bunch of other lower evolution animals. Humans are remarkably. I mean, it's not a stretch to say that we're the most successful animal there is, but we're also helpless. You know, so I could even take, you know, 5 of you and 5 mates, and just drop you and parachute onto like an island, and I don't know how well you guys would last. I mean, but the point being is humans are kind of helpless without the culture they carries with them. You know, that's why we have long childhoods, because you basically you are taught in aggregate all these things, the cumulative knowledge of past people who've come before you, and that's the strength of humans. If you can't access that, then you're just a weakling. And so that's our culture. That's culture. This built knowledge, this built information. So when you're born, if you're raised here in Sydney, I mean, babies are little sponges. They're blank slates in many senses. They come with nothing, and we effectively, to use a provocative word, we basically groom children into being
Unnecessarily provocative.
into being what we want.
Yeah.
So a child that's raised in Aussie becomes an Aussie, and you think a certain way. You just kind of build in certain. And one of the things you learn is like, do you try to cheat the system or not?
Right.
The classic example is if you've been to Japan, as a New Yorker, you come to a street and the street's empty. Do you cross it or not? Japanese don't. They wait for the light to change. And I remember once on my recent long walk across Japan, it was like 6:30 in the morning. I get up, I'm out, ready to go walk, and I come to a busy road or an empty road that's like 4 lanes, generally busy, but now it's empty because it's 6:30 in the morning. And the pedestrian lights in Japan last a long time. Sometimes, like no walking can be like at 2 minutes, and they don't time based on the day. So here I am sitting there waiting for the light to change at 6:30 in the morning. And across from me is an old woman, Japanese woman, and I'm not going to cross. She's not going to cross.
Out of respect to her.
Yeah, out of respect for her and out of the culture you're in. You don't pollute the culture you're in.
Right.
But it's very hard for me. But that's just the Japanese way. Like
I'm afraid I would fail that cultural test.
Yeah, and that's in many ways why they don't like foreigners.
Yeah.
Because you're a cultural pollutant. You're like adding. You got clean water and you're adding dirt to it. And so, that's something that you can't, that's just.
That's part of the absorption as a sponge.
Yes, that you learn as a child. And so often you can do this absurd thing in Japan where they don't litter now. They also don't have garbage cans for some reason. So if you make the mistake of taking your garbage, your sandwich wrapper or your Coke can out of the 7-Eleven with you, you're going to be holding it for a while, unless you feel you're comfortable just breaking the law.
So, what do you make about your niche celebrity that you occupy now?
I don't think I'm a celebrity. I enjoyed anonymity. I don't understand people who want to be famous. I think one of the nicer cultural ticks of Wall Street is that generally, it's changing a little bit now, but generally, people in finance would rather be wealthy than rich, rather than famous.
Right.
And they'll pay to actually not to be famous. I think wanting to to be recognized or wanting to be kind of a public figure is something I've never quite understood. But that's my temperament.
But you have how many thousand subscribers to the Substack?
Yeah, that's there. Obviously, I respect people. I have a lot of I'm very flattered, but I like in general I like the written word to kind of carry the strength or the spoken word, and not kind of not trying to get too on. There's a lot of pressure to kind of appear on to talk about current events because it drives a lot of clicks. It's just something I'm not really.
So you're getting inbound for people to ask you to speak about politics? Correct,
and I
from who?
Well, I did write a book about.
Because of dignity.
Yeah, so I have dabbled into it, and I did write a lot about the rise of Trump back in 2016, 2018, 2019. But I find that very boring after a certain point. And it's become so nasty now that it's just not really, there's not a lot to learn. You have to pick a side, and you can't really nuance your way through the discussion because people just want you to pick a side. And I think the issues are a little bit more complex than just picking a side. And there's a lot of money to picking a side.
Right.
There's a lot of pressure to do that, financial pressure to just kind of say, Trump is the biggest fascist we've ever seen. He's awful, or that Trump is the leader we need in these times. Like, you have to choose one of those.
The savior of America.
Yeah.
Do you feel additional pressure as your Substack grows to meet the expectations of your audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anybody, I think it's an immense gift for somebody to subscribe. And I think there's a huge obligation to should be on any writer, a real obligation to deliver. I think that's there's absolutely no, to be a writer is such a luxury. Like, there's not people are going to pay you just to think. Like, I mean, it sometimes people, I think, in academics forget how lucky they are. And so I try never to forget that. It's just, I would never feel like this is just everything is gravy. But you should really feel as a writer. I mean, when young writers ask me, I just say, you just got to deliver. Like, you got to treat it like a job. It is a job.
Yeah.
You gotta get up, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. You shouldn't feel like, oh, woe is me, I have to write a piece. Like, I mean, come on, man. Like, it's the greatest.
Yeah, what a privilege.
Yeah.
So you're going to go to Townsville today, I believe.
Tomorrow morning.
You'll be from Townsville writing about Sydney. Do you ever get into this place where you're like, I don't have anything to say about this city. I don't know if I need to write anything, and therefore you've gone through places and haven't contributed any script, any copy?
There are times I feel like I'm stretching, but I mean, one of the things I find, I think every writer feels this at some level, is you get tired of your own stuff.
Right.
So you can't imagine that, because to you it's obvious, like, but it's not that obvious to others. And so, there are times when I don't feel particularly inspired. I mean, I'll say that this next piece, I didn't really feel inspired until yesterday. I didn't know what I was going to write about, and I was kind of confused. And that's kind of what I do on my walks, is I try to think, like, and sometimes it hits you and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, like, like, I think probably looking back, my least kind of inspired piece was about Bangkok, and I just didn't. There's nothing about Bangkok that inspired me.
Right.
I didn't come away with any great insight into Thailand or Bangkok, or, but sometimes that just happens.
What is an element to your worldview, to this experience that you've had over the last few years, writing about all these different cities, that you feel people don't necessarily know about you or understand?
One of the things I'm proud of, I guess, is the way I'd phrase it, is there's a lot of Substacks from people who just don't produce content, like, meaning they're sitting in a room watching MSNBC or CNN, and then they're just making takes. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that I actually provide, like, I go out and do the walks.
Right.
Like, I think the and again, this isn't woe is me, because I'm very gifted, but very, very fortunate to have this. But there's a lot of logistics. There's a lot of business stuff, or of just booking flights.
Yeah.
You know, like just like I'm mad at myself, and I'm almost it's almost humorous. Like, we're in Sydney, obviously. I'm talking to you in Sydney, and I'm going to Townsville. When I booked the flight to Townsville, I was here in Sydney, but I booked it from Melbourne to Sydney to Townsville. I don't know why. Because I was doing all sorts of things. I was booking a hotel in Townsville. I was booking my Greyhound. You know, you just do all these things, and you kind of it's like putting the dominoes in place. And I was thinking of I'm going to go from Sydney. I'm going to go from Alice Springs to eventually Melbourne. And somewhere along the line, my brain just broke, and I look at things very carefully. Like, okay, flight from Melbourne to Townsville for Thursday. Like, no, a day later, I woke up at 2 a.m. and go, wait, did I just buy a ticket from Melbourne where I'm not? So that happens, and that's kind of frustrating. So there's a lot of that is involved in constantly moving. There's just a lot of logistics, and I get tired of it. Like, it gets very old very quickly.
When did the Substack start to take off? When did you start noticing subscribers?
It's been a steady growth, but kind of been a very steady growth. But every once in a while, a few pieces go viral, or my version of viral, and that usually does it. In many ways, the early success I owe to Hacker News, that website.
Don't know.
Yeah, it's surprising how much traffic that will drive. Hacker News is it's a posting board that's been around for 25 years now, primarily of computer programmers, as you might, given the name, where they just post links to like news stories.
Yeah.
And then they have a top, people upvote them and downvote them, and then you have the news story of the day. And it's very computer programming, autistic-y type site.
Yeah.
And a few of my early pieces got made voted number one. And that really, that drives traffic. Although I tell you, the hackers don't like to subscribe.
So it's a little bit of serendipity, essentially. You write something good, it picks up.
Look, you're not going to... You're not going to... you got to have pieces that people want to read.
Yeah.
And the pieces have to move.
Yeah.
The pieces have to have... the thing I've learned over time is that you can't, or at least I can't, pull away with just writing stuff where it just kind of bogs down into just esoteric stuff. Your pieces have to move. People only have so much time.
Right.
They only have so much. So it's a lot to ask someone to read a piece of yours. So you better give them something.
Do you have a piece you're most proud of?
I like my ones on China. People don't like my ones on China. I really like
because you're sympathetic towards the nation.
I think they're a little bit more thoughtful than most pieces on China. I've written 3 of them, and I like each of them. But the one that's done the best was the one on Phoenix, which was me basically saying Phoenix sucks. So people like that.
Yeah.
So having a strong opinion about a place will get you a lot of views.
And so the themes of dignity, I haven't read it, admittedly, but heard you speak about it on Tyler Cohen's podcast. It's going through a lot of America and just trying to understand the dignity in everyday lives and maybe lack thereof that they were being given and so forth. Is that a fair assumption?
That's right. I mean, I did roughly... It resulted from 8 years of kind of exploring the U.S. On foot, and talking to people in neighborhoods that you're told not to go to, and so there was a lot of time spent with people in addiction, homeless people.
That I was leading in to ask you that sympathetic eye and really deeper analysis of the culture, because obviously you're an American and you spent so much time there, so you have a better perspective. But have you seen that same, Have you noticed that same feeling in the other places you've gone to and wanted to sort of scratch away at that angle?
Yeah, we don't, it's kind of a peculiarity. It's an embarrassing peculiarity of the U.S. that we have such a large underclass.
Right.
Given how wealthy we are, I'm going into Alice Springs, so I'm going into the Northern Territory and Queensland in 24 hours, so I'll have a better sense of your underclass. But I don't see that here.
Right.
You don't see a lot of it here. You don't see a lot of people sleeping on the streets. You don't see a lot of people sleeping rough. You don't see a lot of addicts. You don't see a lot of homeless. That's true. That's even true of places that are far poorer than here. Like you don't see a lot of. The underclass, for instance, in Jakarta, while by U.S. metrics is huge, isn't really an underclass. Not in the sense of the U.S.
The total desperation.
Yeah. So the U.S. is kind of we're very peculiar in the sense of having so much money and at the same time having this really despondent population. Relatively large population too, both in percentages and numbers.
What is the final? Well, actually, what I wanted to ask you was, because you retired from your finance job. That was the last sort of corporate job you've had, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had a lot of really good years there. Did you retire with enough money to just buy a house, sit in the yard, and read the news?
Yeah.
So this is essentially for you just pure passion. I want to see the world.
Yeah. I mean, I have very, very, very inexpensive taste. So if I was alone, I could do that. But I also have a family who have less inexpensive taste than me. So yeah, I mean, I need to generate. I like to generate money just because it's nice. I feel an obligation to my children. But at the same time, but in general, yeah. Like I mean, I could basically sit on a beach and in not Bondi, it's too expensive for me, but like I could sit on a far-flung beach and kind of just read the news and I guess, I don't know, play video games during the day. I don't know.
And your wife, I'm sorry to ask you, are you still together?
Yeah.
Okay, because I just noticed you weren't wearing a ring.
Yeah, I don't wear jewelry.
Okay, and therefore...
Given the populations I hang out with, I wear no signs of wealth.
What about her in all of this? Since you're away for such long periods of time, does she want to join you on trips? Do you want to bring her on trips?
She's a very, very different traveler than me. We learned that very quickly, and my kids are very different travelers. My kids are all grown. They're my youngest daughter is actually in Japan right now, and I give all my children the offers of if they ever want to fly anywhere, I'll go with them. But they're just, I don't have a lot of they don't like to travel the way I do, and which I get, like you know, but also that's just not who they want to. You can't really. There's a book from the 70s called Mosquito Coast. I think they turned it into a movie by Paul Theroux, and it's about kind of this one man's obsession with wanting to live on the coast of Costa Rica, Mosquito Coast, and how he kind of drags his family through hell to try to live his own personal dream. You can't really drag your family through hell, if your dream is relatively eccentric. Walking through Ulaanbaatar is really not like
not a fun family day out.
Not for my children, at least.
It's funny, Paul Theroux made that. He himself probably projected quite a lot onto that story. Yeah. What about the great travel writers? Do you, as you're walking through towns, listen to audiobooks, do these people ever get into your radar?
No.
And why is that?
Because I don't like to be corrupted. I mean, you kind of like to go in cold. In general, I've read Paul Theroux. He's the one I like the best.
Yeah.
His Dark Star Safari is particularly interesting. But in general, I have no animosity towards them. I have no jealousy or And, I would love to meet everybody who's ever. If there's anybody who I find who does something similar to me, I try to make them a friend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily read what they do because I think in many ways, writing's really interesting because, I was kind of a math prodigy, and math is easy. Like if you give me a problem to solve, in general, there's one way to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can attack it from different ways, but writing is infinite. Like you tell me I want to describe Sydney, like it's overwhelming the number of different ways you can go about that, both stylistically, different word choices, different ideas, and so if you stop and think about it, you can become frozen by all the possibilities. And I think part of the problem with reading other people is it just ends up making me frozen by possibilities. Whereas when I do find people who do something similar to me, I always invite them out to go have a drink or talk to them. But I don't necessarily want to read their stuff. I don't expect them to read my stuff because there's a sense of like you kind of do what you do, and you don't want it to kind of get confused.
So you're clearly not interested in the public-facing fame. That makes 100% sense. But inherently in most humans, there is a desire, whether we admit it or not, but to be respected by those that we admire. So therefore, these same people that you might admire, do you know if they're reading your Substack and they're in your DMs?
I have no idea.
No, okay.
I have no idea. I mean, like, I don't even know who's a travel writer these days. I'm so removed from the field.
Right. Oh, I think the writing side of it is...
I mean, so much of it's
dead.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
YouTube, a lot of that.
Yeah, because that's what it's become. And so, people tell
the
me...
hunger exists, but the medium changes.
Yeah, there's a lot of... And, people ask why I don't... photography is very important to my work. I feel, I call myself a writer, but I focus as much on the photography. That was especially true of my stuff in the U.S. on Dignity. So people always ask me why I don't use video, and it would
get in the way.
Sorry?
It would get in the way.
When I was doing my work with drug dealers and addicts, it very much got in the way.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's not natural.
Right.
It's like to jam the
It's not
camera in
real.
someone's face.
Yeah.
There's a guy out there who people tell me to read who does something similar, but he goes on. We were, in fact, in Kampala at the same time. Mad Russian, they call him, or something. I forget his name. And he vlogs, he videos everything.
There's a great one called Bald and Bankrupt.
That's him.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
he's something else though. Like that's sheer charisma that carries.
Yeah,
him
that's what I'm
through
gonna say.
all
Is
of
like
that.
he can pull it off because he's very friendly.
Yeah.
Like, and he blusters through scenes, and like that's just not me. Like I'm not gonna do that.
Exactly.
I don't have the capacity to just pull that off.
Oh.
But we were in Kampala at the same time.
Yeah.
And we had somewhat similar takes. I think I don't watch his stuff again because it's just not me. But like I don't have any problem with what he does.
Yeah. Why would you? Yeah.
I mean, like I think it's perfectly fine. It's just a very different style, and
Totally.
again, I do know that takes a lot of work. What he does.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. That's a lot of like. He probably has support. Meaning he might have 2 people with him or something, but it's just a lot of work, man.
Yeah, totally.
It's a lot of, and so I respect that.
So we pulled this podcast together really last minute. Typically, I'd be doing a lot more research, but I wonder what's something I've really missed that you think would be interesting to talk about that no one really asks you.
I think you covered most of it. People don't generally ask me about my physics background, but that's okay. Unless your listeners you think are particularly interested in particle physics.
No, we don't do particle physics. But I suppose the other day on the walk, we spoke quite a lot about the more financial side of your life and some of the people you met there. But I don't think that's right for public consumption.
Yeah, I mean, the finance does inform how I think about things.
Yeah.
I have no I've been generally pretty cynical about finance, but or at least pretty much a critic of it. But it's good people in general.
Yeah.
Smart people.
Then final two questions for you, and these ones that I ask every guest if I can. First being, what is the role that serendipity has played in your life?
I don't believe in it.
What? How can that be?
I don't believe in coincidence. So this is a hard one for me. I used to have a long rant about why I don't believe in coincidence, but for instance, one funny example of what looks like a coincidence is when I was in Ulaanbaatar, I took a bus to kind of Mongolia's second city, and it was about a 6-hour ride, and there was only one other Westerner on the bus, and when we got dropped off, it was like a mile and a half walk into town, so we walked in together. She was a younger woman, backpacker, and we talked, and we kind of got along. She had wanted to see the Gare district, which is a supposedly no-go zone that's unsafe for single females. So we scheduled a time to go walk with her. We started talking during the course of like 6 hours of walking, all these kind of, she sounded very familiar to me. Like I kind of know this woman, and ends up we had gone to the same. She was a graduate of the same tiny college that I went to in Florida.
Oh.
So that I met in Ulaanbaatar. She had graduated from my college. When I mean tiny, I mean 400 students. It was a very small college, and so it was really interesting that I ran into another graduate from my college in Ulaanbaatar who graduated 30 years later. But again, that made sense. We got along really well, and I do my best to try to help her in life. I feel like she's one of my children now. But like that's something where it makes sense. If you go to this weird college, you might end up in Mongolia. So I don't really necessarily believe in coincidence.
But is this informed by faith or something? Because that's that.
That's my kind of. I just
that
think
has to be a coincidence,
I think that my old spreadsheet brain answer was, and coincidences are because there are so many variables in life, and when you're bound to have overlaps in some of them.
So it's just you're observing it, hence it can't be a coincidence. And my favorite question: what is the country you're most bullish on? Project 10, 15 years into the future.
Wow, I think I'm going to say, contrary to everything I said, maybe Indonesia.
Oh, there you go.
Having talked through you about it, Indonesia, bullish in terms of bigger player in the world, I guess, but in terms of like underappreciated, in terms of like where would I live for 15 years if I had to like go to one place and be there for 15 years, spend the next 15 years trapped in that country, maybe France.
The food's better,
but it's just it's kind of got the Australian sense of balance of life with better food and kind of a little bit more to do.
And what's next for you after Australia? What are the parts on the map that you've yet to touch which you'd like to?
I would love to do Russia, but I can't.
Totally, that'd be amazing.
But I'm going to spend all of September at home, just writing and just relaxing and trying to get my back 100%. And then I'm going off to China and Burma next.
Taiwan, have you been there?
I have. Great place. Crappy weather.
I'm going there later this year, so I'd like to talk to you about it.
It's don't go in August.
But then your book. So you've written a novel. It's kind of half autobiographical. What about larger writing projects beyond the Substack? What do you aspire to do?
I would like to be a novelist. I'd like to write more novels. They're hard.
Right.
It's hard to writing fiction. Writing fiction is particularly easy, but writing fiction that with a cohesive plot is hard.
Right. Well, Mr. Arnade, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for having me. That went well, I think.